Have you ever wondered, is death truly the end? Could the soul continue its journey through many different lifetimes? And if so, what would happen if a very young child suddenly began recalling every detail of a life already lived? The story you are about to hear is not just a legend or folklore, but one of the most unusual cases ever documented, where an Indian boy carried memories that seemed not to belong to the present. And that journey began with words that sounded impossible coming from the mouth of a child. In 1944, in the small town of Bisauli in Uttar Pradesh, India, the Sharma family welcomed a healthy baby boy, whom they named Parmod. The village was peaceful, life was simple, and no one could have imagined that this child would later become the center of a mysterious story about past life memories. When he was just over 2 years old, Parmod began to show behaviors that puzzled his parents. One quiet afternoon, while his mother was preparing lunch, the little boy confidently declared that she did not need to cook for him anymore, because in Moradabad, his wife had already prepared a meal for him. The name Moradabad, a city nearly 150 kilometers away, came from the mouth of a toddler who could barely speak properly, had never left the village, and had never heard of any distant place. His words left the entire family stunned. At first, they thought it was only the naive imagination of a child. But in the days that followed, he repeated the same claim with such certainty that it became difficult to dismiss. By the time he was 3 or 4, those strange memories grew even more detailed. Parmod began describing a former life in which he had been a successful merchant. He spoke clearly about a biscuit and soda water shop named Mohan Brothers in Moradabad, insisting that he had once been one of its owners. He even mentioned having another business in Saharanpur and traveling to Delhi many times on business trips. What worried his family even more was how Parmod played. While other children his age ran and laughed in the yard, Parmod preferred to sit alone, building miniature shops out of mud, wiring them with pretend electrical cords, as if he were recreating a real store. He shaped biscuits from mud, laid them out neatly, and served them with tea and soda water. Every action carried an air of familiarity, as though he had lived these routines thousands of times before in another life. Beyond that, Parmod also showed dissatisfaction with his present life. In his young eyes, there often flickered a sense of longing, as he compared his modest home with the wealthier life he claimed to have once known. To him, the past appeared like a vivid painting, while the present felt like a diminished shadow, a disappointing detour. In those early years, the Sharma family gradually realized that their son was not simply living in the present. It was as if he were haunted by another life, distant in time and place, yet vividly alive within his mind. Parmod's stories about another life never stopped at scattered details. As he grew older, he began to display unusual signs that left his parents both worried and afraid. At mealtimes, the oddity was most obvious in his taste. In India, children usually love yogurt, a familiar and healthy food. Yet Parmod showed an unusually strong dislike for it. He always tried to avoid it, sometimes even showing discomfort and unease just at the sight of it. Not only did he refuse it, but Parmod often explained that in his past life, eating too much curd had made him very ill, and from then on, yogurt had become something dangerous in his memory. Each time they heard him say this, his parents were both astonished and unsettled. How could a 4-year-old child connect a simple food with the memory of sickness from someone else? It didn't stop there. The boy also carried a fear of water. Bathing, which should have been an ordinary routine, turned into a torment. Unlike other children who splashed and laughed, Parmod curled up, trembling, sometimes breaking into tears as if reliving a painful moment. He once said that he had died in a bathtub in his previous life. Although in reality, it had only been therapeutic baths for the man in his past life story, the memory remained etched in him like an indelible scar. And above all, there was the longing for his past life family. Parmod often spoke of a wife and 5 children in Moradabad. He didn't talk with curiosity, but with the emotions of a true father, aching from being apart from his family. Each time he did, his parents fell silent, feeling that their son was living in 2 lives at once, one in Bisauli as a child, and another far away, left unfinished. In Indian culture, it was not difficult for Parmod's parents to accept that perhaps their child really was recalling a former existence. Yet folk belief cast a shadow of fear. Children who remembered past lives were thought to die young. Because of this, instead of encouraging him or seeking to verify his claims, they chose to avoid the subject. This became even more heartbreaking when Parmod pleaded day after day to be taken to Moradabad to see his former family again. His expectant eyes and urgent voice left his parents choked with emotion, but they still could not decide. To them, accepting his words meant facing the terror of possibly losing him, and no parent could bear such a thought. They chose silence, hoping time would fade the strange memories. Yet Parmod's yearning did not diminish. Every day he continued to live between 2 worlds, a small boy in Bisauli and a merchant in Moradabad who had never accepted his death. Parmod's stories about Moradabad, about a shop called Mohan Brothers, and about a distant family soon spread beyond the small village of Bisauli. The news eventually reached a family in Moradabad, the Mehra family. For them, every detail the boy had spoken was like an echo from the past. The Mehra family had once had a man named Parmanand Mehra, a key figure in their business, and the owner of the biscuit and soda water shop Mohan Brothers. He had died on May 9, 1943, only 18 months before Parmod was born. The cause of death had haunted his relatives for years. Parmanand loved curd, and at a wedding feast he had eaten far too much. Afterwards, he fell gravely ill, which developed into appendicitis and then peritonitis. In his final days, even as his family tried to stop him, he insisted on eating more curd, afraid he would never have the chance again. He died after one of his therapeutic baths meant to ease the pain. For the family, it was a devastating loss. He left behind a widow and 5 children, 4 sons and 1 daughter. What Parmod often described, his strong aversion to curd, his fear of water, and the sense that he had died in a bathtub, matched chillingly with the circumstances of Parmanand's death. For the Mehra family, it was hard to believe such parallels could be coincidence. In the summer of 1949, the Mehra family decided to travel to Bisauli to meet the boy themselves. But their first attempt ended in disappointment. Parmod was away with his parents. Soon after, however, Parmod's father accepted their invitation to visit Moradabad. For him, the decision was not easy. In Indian culture, the idea that children might recall past lives was not unfamiliar, but it carried with it a heavy shadow of folk belief, that such children often died young. Parmod's parents feared that by confronting this truth, they might also have to face that grim possibility. Yet, under the relentless pleading and longing of their son, Parmod's father finally agreed. He took the boy on a train to Moradabad. On the journey, Parmod did not behave like a child leaving home for the first time. Instead, his eyes sparkled with joy, as though he were returning rather than departing. When the train arrived at the Moradabad station, the first extraordinary moment occurred. Among those waiting was Sri Karam Chand Mehra, Parmanand's cousin and close companion. The instant Parmod saw him, he rushed forward, clung to him, and burst into tears like a loved one reunited after years apart. Karam Chand was stunned, feeling as if his cousin had truly returned in the body of a small child. Parmod's father stood speechless, overwhelmed with confusion. His son was living a life he could not comprehend or control. From the station, Parmod refused to be guided. Sitting confidently in the horse-drawn carriage, he directed the driver turn by turn until they arrived at the Mohan brothers' shop. Once inside, his gaze immediately fell on the owner's seat, the gaddi. He frowned, displeased, saying it had been moved. And indeed, after Parmanand's death, the family had changed its position. Then Parmod walked to the soda-making machine. The Mehra family had deliberately disconnected a small part, testing him. But with only a glance, Parmod pointed out the problem and explained how to fix it. When they followed his instructions, the machine worked perfectly again. The witnesses looked at each other in stunned silence, unable to explain what they had just seen. In that moment, the border between two lives seemed to vanish. To the Mehra family, Parmod's every action brought Parmanand back to life. To the Sharma family, fear and awe mingled as they watched their young son sink deeper into the memories of a man long dead. And this was only the beginning. Behind the doors of that shop awaited even more emotional encounters. The reunion with the family and the old home, where past and present would collide with even greater force. After guiding everyone to the Mohan brothers' shop and astonishing them with uncanny details, Parmod did not stop there. His journey continued, leading the group to the old home of Parmanand Mehra, a place that once contained an entire life he claimed as his own. To Parmod, the house was anything but strange. The moment he stepped inside, his eyes lit up, as if every wall and object stirred fragments of memory. He walked straight to the bedroom where Parmanand had once slept, recognizing the exact spot of the bed. He pointed to a wooden cupboard where the deceased man had kept his personal belongings, and to a low dining table, declaring that it was where he had often taken his meals. When he noticed a newly installed room divider, Parmod immediately remarked that it had not been there in his time. The most emotional moment came when Parmanand's mother entered the room. Parmod rushed toward her with the affection and reverence of a son returning after years of separation. The elderly woman embraced him tightly, tears streaming down her face, for within this child she felt the presence of her lost son. Soon after, Parmanand's widow appeared. Parmod recognized her instantly, but his face flushed with shyness, as though torn between the innocence of a child's body and the memories of a grown husband. He expressed displeasure at seeing her dressed in a white sari, the garb of a widow, instead of the colorful saris she had worn before. In his mind, she was not a widow at all, but still his wife, preserved in the memory that had never ended. When meeting Parmanand's children, Parmod's revelations deepened the astonishment. He immediately identified the daughter and one of the sons who were present. Later, when the youngest son, Gordon, returned from school, Parmod not only recognized him, but called him by the affectionate nickname that only a father had ever used. When Gordon hesitated and addressed him as Parmod, the boy sternly corrected him, insisting that he was still his father, only now in a smaller form. The pride and paternal warmth in his words left the room in stunned silence, with many eyes brimming with tears. It wasn't only the people he remembered. Parmod also recalled the family's properties and the changes made since Parmanand's death. When taken to the Victory Hotel, He immediately pointed out newly built structures, saying they had not existed in his time. This was confirmed to be true. The additions had been constructed after Parmanand's passing. Inside the hotel, Parmod identified several wooden cupboards, declaring they were the ones he had commissioned for the Churchill House Hotel in Saharanpur. In fact, the family confirmed that after Parmanand's death, those cupboards had indeed been moved from Churchill House to Victory Hotel. During a later visit to Saharanpur, Parmod even recognized a doctor who had once been Parmanand's close friend. There, he also encountered a man named Yasmin, and without hesitation said that Yasmin had owed him money. At first, Yasmin denied it, but after the Mehra family reassured him they would not pursue repayment, he admitted that Parmod was right. For a 5-year-old child to know of such private matters was beyond ordinary explanation, unless those memories truly belonged to a man who had once lived. Every detail Parmod revealed: bedroom, cupboard, dining table, the white sari of the widow, the nickname for his youngest son, and even financial debts, matched perfectly with the life of Parmanand Mehra. For the Mehra family, this was a miraculous reunion. Their lost loved one seemed to return, not only through vivid memories, but through the deep affection he still carried for his mother, wife, and children. For the Sharma family, it was a moment of mixed awe and dread. Their little boy, barely 4 years old, was living intensely in the memories of a man long gone. That day in Moradabad, the line between past and present seemed to vanish. A young child had revived an entire lifetime, and no one present could deny that Parmod Sharma was carrying within him 2 lives at once. The case of Parmod Sharma was later meticulously documented by Ian Stevenson, the renowned physician and researcher from the University of Virginia, in his vast collection of thousands of past life memory reports from children. For Stevenson, the details Parmod recalled could not simply be dismissed as coincidence. They matched with striking accuracy the life of Parmanand Mehra, from the name of the shop and the operation of the soda machine to the very fears and eating habits that had led to his death. Yet the most important question was not about the evidence itself, but why a child could remember so vividly. In Parmanand's case, death had not been gentle. He passed away in physical agony after a long illness triggered by eating too much curd. He died with deep regret, leaving behind his wife and 5 young children. He died with many attachments still unresolved: his shop, his property, and unfinished relationships. It is perhaps these intense emotions, sorrow, longing, and unfulfilled love, that engraved themselves into the memory of the soul, carrying forward into the next life. In the body of a child, Parmod carried not only factual memories, but also the emotional weight of a man who had lived before. His fears of water, of curd, mirrored the cause of death. His yearning for wife and children was proof of love that remained. This story reminds us, death is not the end. Human beings are not only bodies, but eternal souls, donning new garments through successive lives. Each life is a journey of learning, a lesson for the soul's growth. Parmod shows us that if we depart in pain, regret, or resentment, the soul may carry those burdens forward. But if we live with kindness, love, compassion, and forgiveness, these become the most precious luggage for the journey ahead. The timeless message of this story is clear. Live well, because every action and every emotion leaves its imprint on the soul. Love deeply, for love is the bond that ties us together beyond death. Forgive freely, because only forgiveness can release us from the chains of karma and regret. Looking into Parmod's eyes as he met his former family, we realize death does not erase love. It merely transforms it into another chapter in the soul's endless journey. And the greatest lesson for us, across all lives, is to live with goodness, to love, and to let go of what holds us back. If you feel a connection with the story of Parmod Sharma, or if you have ever experienced faint memories of another life, share them in the comments below. Each story adds another piece to the great puzzle of the soul's mysterious journey. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel, so you won't miss other extraordinary stories of reincarnation, past life memories, and the profound lessons they carry for us all. Thank you.